Hi YouTube, we're here with the Timber Horizon Hobby Timber 1.5 meter, and we're just going to get this thing assembled. I don't usually look at instructions for stuff, but when I'm building these planes I do, because a lot of times they help you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. If you try to skip over things, you're going to have problems, and they will help you avoid that. This is the most important page here. This is going to show you the setup for the computerized transmitters. And so like in my case I have a DX18. So that's one of the things I'm going to set up. The other thing is this plane comes with Safe Select as part of the AS3X setup. And what that means is you can choose to turn on just AS3X, so there is no safe, or you can turn on safe, which allows you to switch between safe and AS3X. So, I mean, unless you're just some safe hater, then I don't know why you wouldn't want safe. It's kind of nice, like if you want to put safe on and like look over there for a second, then you at least know it's going to keep going. So I'm going to have that setting turned on, even though I probably won't use safe hardly ever. So it's nice, you can do, it's almost like a heading hold. I will program in a holding pattern, so it'll go in a circle, things like that. So, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble the landing gear. This plane does come with floats. Floats are one of those things where they're like huge space suckers until you're ready to use them. So I'm going to figure out a way to just kind of store these in a smaller, more concise package until I'm ready to build them the first time. And then once I build them the first time, then I will store them assembled. So for now, the instructions go as follows. This is the battery hatch. I'm going to just put this out of the way for now. Landing gear. Flip it over. Let me grab me a couple of pillows, like a blanket or something. Basically, these things go toward the back. Just line them up. There's screw holes and then a screw hole for this. Once you're done, you just get those all lined up. I'm going to go ahead and throw that blanket down. These things are so easy to damage, so you're always having to kind of think of new creative ways. Of course, you can get a plane stand, but I don't know, I can't bring myself to buy one, even though I'm sure that there's probably a good one or two that would work really nice for this. So basically, I'm gonna find the screw pack. They do have the screws labeled. They say it's screws B, which, to be honest with you, I've never had a Horizon Hobby plane that doesn't come with labeled screws. So they weren't labeled this time, which was a little bit of a disappointment for me. I'm not too worried about it because there's only 1, 2, 3, and then 2 big plastic screws. So 4 total types of screws. It's not going to really be rocket science to figure it out. But it's still kind of frustrating because Horizon Hobby, you come to sort of expect a certain level of quality. And I feel like they skimp occasionally on things like this, or maybe they just forgot. Trouble here is I'm not 100% sure which ones I'm supposed to be using. So I think I'm supposed to be using these, but I guess I don't know for sure. I'm going to get a Phillips screwdriver. Phillips number 2, which just basically means if you don't know how to look at the number on a screwdriver, this is like a P2 on a Craftsman screwdriver. Very, very common screwdriver size. At least in North America, it's very common. So I can tell that we at least have 4 of these screws. So it's either these ones or this ones. These are super fine thread. I doubt that's what they are. These are a little bit thicker threads. So let's just see if the machine threads will machine into this spot here. If they do, then that'll tell us the answer to my question. And it's looking like these are probably going to go. Yep, that's where they're going to go. So this, are you going to be able to see this?
I can.
There's 4 of these. And then there's also 4 of these. So obviously these are going to bite into plastic, and then these ones are going to bite into a machine screw. So you want to use the machine screws on this. My label was not, or my bags were not labeled. Typically these little bags have like a letter B on them, so that there's no question. And that's just one of those things you come to expect from Horizon, that little added layer of quality that you don't get from other companies. And it looks like we're going to be using G to screw in the spring. So this is not going to be overly hard, so what I'm going to do is once I kind of get this in position, we'll just pause it and come right back to you. Let me get this side down and then we'll pause it. So basically I'm just these are machine screws, so you don't want to overdo it, but you don't want to underdo it either. If they're loose, they'll come out for sure. If you wanted to use Loctite on here, you could, because it's metal on metal. I hear about a lot of people using Loctite on applications where it's plastic. It's not going to do anything. It may actually lubricate the screws, so you don't want to use Loctite unless it's the right type of Loctite. And there's about 4 trillion different types of Loctite out there. You'd be better off to just put a little CA on the head when you're done. Okay, so I've torqued this down. I've torqued this side down. Okay, so now that that's tight, you can see that it'll allow it to splay out quite a bit. This bag has 2 screws. This bag has 4. So it looks like we need, oh man, that's tough. I am not 100% sure which one it is. But ironically enough, this is already assembled onto here, so I don't need to figure out what that is. That's the little clamp that holds these 2 together. In the drawings, it shows that you have to assemble it. So in that case, then I'm assuming we have to use G to screw these down in here. So I'm just going to show you G compared to B here. If your bags come unlabeled, I'll show you the difference right now. And when you start doing it, it sort of is self-explanatory to a certain degree, but the first one's kind of tricky. This is the one that's going to hold in the spring. This is the one that's going to actually go into your machine to actually hold the wheels on there. You can see that these are quite a bit longer, and they also have a lot coarser thread. The machine ones are very, very fine thread, but they are about the same size for the thickness of the shaft. So that screw, you might even want a 1.5 size screwdriver there, and we're just going to take and get that lined up there. And weirdly enough, that doesn't seem like it's even going to hold in there, so I wonder if maybe I've picked the wrong size. And that's tough to tell. So I guess I could alternatively just try using another screw. You know what? I just don't know yet. Yeah, that's not it. It's got to be the bigger ones. So there must be somewhere else we use G later in the instructions. So it is the bigger, fatter ones. And that's the last choice. The weird thing is there's 4 of them in here and it's only calling for 2 at this moment in time. So my guess is we're going to need to use G's later on. These G's are actually going to bite in, and the head is a little bit larger, so it's going to catch the spring. So that's the way you can tell. And yeah, that's definitively bigger. The head is the proper size to retain that spring mechanism. So yeah, that's fine. That's going to work great. So I wish I could say that that's all common sense and anybody should just magically know that, but I hate to break it to you. Like, you know, I work for a living on industrial machinery. I don't like guessing on stuff. So we're going to pause it. We'll come back when we're assembling the middle here. Okay guys, we got we got both sides on now. We just need to attach this middle bracket. I decided I'm going to put this on just so I don't have a screw fall in there. That would not be good. There's 2 Phillips screws that go in here. Let me see if I can maybe rotate around now that you can see that a little bit better, maybe. Can you get that in? You there?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically just, I got a smaller screwdriver. This one's a, I think it's a 1. Yeah, I don't know what size it is. It's a lot smaller. Sorry guys. It's a precision screwdriver. It's not a number 2 like before. Okay, so you can spin that. And then this is just going to go in there, and then you can just spin it right back. And then you can, that'll hold that in place. You can get that back on there. Man, that's really not going so hot. And she's getting started now finally. I'm just kind of holding that right now while the screws are getting aligned. I don't know about you guys, but when I build these things, I always feel like I have to be so aggressive, and it's made of foam, so it's like there's no way to not damage something. Okay, so we'll just show you the plate. Wow, that's got a pretty good amount of spring on it. I'm really impressed with that. And it looks nice too, I think. It looks, honestly, to me like this is tall. That's the only thing I don't like. But to get clearance, I mean, geez, you could keep away from prop strikes really easy. And I think it looks cool from the front. But, okay, cool. So that's the end of that step. So let's just slide this off for now. That was weird. You see the steam on the end? So, if you want to pause it, I'll get to the next page. All right, guys, this is the horizontal stabilizer and elevator installation. Don't forget to put in your carbon fiber rod. It is easy to forget that step. I've done it before. Basically, that thing lines up in a hole right here. It's very, very obvious. Slide that through, get it to about halfway point. It'll force itself in. And then these things are keyed so that they will receive one another. So the elevator works together. And there's also a little hole. So it's quite easy to line these up. Sometimes a little harder than it looks to actually get everything forced together. But in this case, wow, that was way smooth. I helped my friend put together his P47 1.2 meter, the Razorback with Safe Select. And that thing was ridiculous. I couldn't believe how hard it was to assemble that. I guess one could argue that you may need to take this apart to transport it if it's big enough. I won't need to take this apart to just transport it, but I may have to take the main wing off. I'm really not looking forward to that, by the way. Okay, so now these ones are listed as B, and that is probably not so good because the ones that were used on the bottom, which were B, are already used up. There was 4 of them, so these couldn't be B. So anyway, thank you, Horizon, for that confusing detail. I'm assuming that this is the correct screw. Let's try it out, and if it doesn't work, then I'll let you guys know. This does feel like this is the thinner one. So now let me show you the difference between what I was using on the spring. This is what received the spring on the wheel splay, and then this is the one that I'm using on the tail. So just to give you an idea of the difference in length, and these are thinner. This is what's holding on the tail. Did you get that at all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think so.
And it does appear to be a good fit. And then to add insult to injury, sometimes they add, like randomly extra pieces too, so that makes it even more confusing. I am about 95% sure that these are the right size, because if these fit good, there's no way that those bigger ones would go through without splitting the plastic. So really one of the easiest tail assemblies I've had ever from Horizon. Sometimes you have to stuff them in there and you're damaging finish and squishing them and pushing as hard as you can possibly push. Okay, the next step is you got to hook up this adapter to actually control the elevator. So I'll go ahead and flip this upside down. And referring to the manual, they say that you want to put this one in the middle hole. So in this case, I want you to see if you can, maybe I can turn this that way maybe. So what you want to do is, this thing needs to be pulled out so that you can get to it. And so the way you do it is you actually pop this thing off that way, and it comes off altogether. And once you get that slid into the correct hole, which is supposed to be the middle hole, remember guys? Come on now. My control horn has evidently got a little bit of a buildup in that middle hole, so I might have to grab a tool to free that up. Thank you for tipping over, Plane. I'm just grabbing some pliers here. Actually, a flat-bladed screwdriver will do the trick in this case. I'm just going to use this flat-bladed screwdriver to push toward me. I don't understand why it's not wanting to go through. It goes through on the top hole. There it goes. I don't know if I was pushing it the wrong angle or what. So then once you get that done, you've got this weird little doohickey. And the doohickey slides back on to the control arm, or the control rod in this case. Ow! And then it stabs you, like this one just stabbed me. I'm glad I'm not bleeding all over the place. Then once you're on, then you just snap it back to itself, like so. Man. Get in there. There. Okay. Great. So it's in there. Can they see that good, do you think?
Hold it up. Okay.
So you see kind of from the top view there, or the bottom view in this case. Mm-hmm. And you can see that there's a little bit of a bend in that. I think that's normal. I think that's correct. We'll find out here in a few minutes when we're doing control surface tests. So getting an idea for the scale of how big this plane is going to end up being. And it's looking really nice. Real happy with it so far. Landing gear are very stout. I'm sort of surprised how stout they are. Okay, so obviously we're going to have to center the control surfaces when you have this all bound up. We're not going to do that now. The next step is calling for installing the leading edge slats, which calls for medium thick CA, which is going to be, in my case, a Bob Smith Industries Insecure medium odorless, which would be a foam safe product, and I get that just at the local hobby shop. Nothing too terribly special about that. Can't tell if it's running. I might need to get a pin to open that up. Would you go ahead and pause it and we'll get that cleared up.
Okay.
Okay, so guys, the next step is we got to pull off these little protective covers. These little things are kind of weird. I've never seen a piece like this, and they're just stuck on there with some sort of like a weak adhesive, and once you peel them off, you see that there's this little vein that's going to receive the leading edge slats. They're dirty. I don't really understand why, but I'm going to actually hang on to these pieces in case I decide to take off the leading edge slats. I'd actually like the leading edge slats to be active instead of passive, but I think that might be, I don't even think on a real plane this size they would just probably be gravity operated, so they would drop down in the event of a slowdown. So as the wing starts to stall, they actually fall down. But I would be fine with just having a servo control deal. Okay, now these leading edge slats, There doesn't appear to be a label, except that there is R and L. So the other way you can tell is when you put them on, you want the wing shape to be the correct wing shape. So it's going to be narrow on the trailing edge, it's going to be thick on the leading edge. So then you can just double check and you can say, okay, so this is the left wing. So this of course is the left side, and that would be the right side. So this is in fact the left wing. Just dry fit it, make sure everything looks kosher before you get it all glued. These things just sit in here real simply. And what I might do is, it's saying to CA this in. That is so cool, guys.
Wait, hold it down lower.
Look at that.
You can see it. Yeah.
I don't know if they can get a view of.
Yeah.
So a leading edge slat means that you can be flying at a higher angle of attack, and at a certain point you're going to block enough wind and you'll have a higher pressure here than here, so your wing will drop. There's no more lift created. So when you fly at normal, then there's a high pressure and a low pressure, so it creates lift. Well, if you're at a high angle of attack, eventually the air stops going here and it starts just going over the top. And that's what this does, is it helps to redirect some of that air right over the top of the wings. So you can be flying at a really low speed. And when I say really low, it's all relative. So, you know, if you're going 60 or 70 knots in real life, then you might be able to go like 50 or 55 with leading edge slats. So it helps a lot. And that's just totally thrown out there. Medium CA, tip's been cleared. What I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and pull this off, and I'm just going to do a little bit on this rather than putting it on the foam. And then I'm going to take and put some kicker onto the foam. I'm just doing one little strip on each side of each of these little control adapter deals. And I'm actually going to wait and I'll put the kicker on after I get this installed. This is a little bit awkward because it's kind of flimsy. Then you've got control surfaces on the opposite side, so it's kind of like not really easy to hold on to anything. So that's why I was going to use kicker, is the kicker will help hold that all in place quickly. So I can get that where I want, give one little kiss of kicker, done. So the first part's done, then there's 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so there's a total of 6. So the second one's in place. Give it one little spritz, third one spritz, fourth one spritz, fifth one spritz, and sixth one spritz. And to be honest with you, it said to use medium thickness, medium thick CA. I think honestly on this application it might be kind of nice to have the thin CA, because then you could take and just put them in place and then glue them right away. So what I'm doing is I'm going back and following up with just a little bit more of this medium thick CA, just to get a little better adhesion, because I don't feel like I got enough in there maybe. But I guess with CA it's kind of like you don't want to overdo it, because the stuff does add weight to your plane. Eventually you're gonna be heavy. Not on something like this, but you know what I mean. Okay, cool. So that's that. We can set this to the side. Obviously I'm not going to make you watch the other side. There's not really that much different going on. If you want to go ahead and pause it.
Okay.
Alright guys, so we got the leading edge slats on both sides of the wings. The next step is to attach the wings together. And this is going to be kind of a telling moment. This is when we're going to decide whether or not this thing is going to be really, really difficult to take apart for transportation. I mean, I probably wouldn't even pull that out if I was taking this apart for transport. But I don't know about you guys, but I hate taking planes apart for transport. It's a huge pain. even if it's just like 2 screws, it's still a huge pain. I don't want to have to take that crap apart. So maybe this will be one where I'll just take off the wing and pivot the wing so that it runs down the length of the plane. Okay, so it's going. Guys, I built a lot of planes, and I gotta say that was pretty darn smooth. That might explain why there was residue in there. I'm assuming that part of their quality process was to make sure it fits. Oh, that's interesting. There's like a gouge of foam out of that. Give you guys a shot of that. It's always comforting to see that there's obvious signs of being torn apart. But like I said, I don't know, maybe they put this thing into a test jig. It's always hard to tell what the heck is going on at the factory. Okay, then you're supposed to use this little plastic piece, which it has an angle to it. It has an angle to it. And when you look down the length of it, the angle should go uphill to the front of the wing. Otherwise, it's not gonna go in there square. So I'll show you that. That's the way it looks when it's right. You get it? Mm-hmm. So the other thing too I'm noticing about this is that is an ugly crack. So I am not real pleased about that crack being so obvious, guys. Look at that. That is freaking ugly. Because that's going to be visible. I mean, it's not going to be hidden at all. It's right on the freaking top of the plane. So, I don't know. That is kind of a no-no in my book, but whatever. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to Horizon Hobby so they can ignore me. I'll call them. They'll say, oh, just ship it. Just ship it back right after you glue it all together. But honestly, that gap, it's not the end of the world. I just have high hopes about these things not sucking when I get them. And then I see details like that. I'm like, this thing might be the best flying plane in the world, but why do they have such a problem with this last 1/8 of an inch? Like, why not have it a little bit oversized? But whatever. So you can see what I'm talking about. If you have all these wires attached, you could build an adapter so that you could hold the wing in place. And then when you get to the flying field, you don't have to reattach all your wires. You just have to slide it back into these 2 slots. And there's 2 screws in, which that would be a reasonable amount. That thing is pretty awesome. So I'm going to plug the wires together. They're all labeled. I don't think you guys need to see me plug the wires together. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then I need to bind the plane. So I'm going to pause it, and then I'll show you when I start binding. Alright guys, we have to bind the system, so I'm going to model select, add new model, create. This is a DX18. It's so you'll scroll in your name. Pause it. So this is the name, so you can go back. The aircraft type is going to have flaps. Okay, pause it for a second. Yes.
Okay.
So you're going to go to system setup. I just wanted to show you this computerized transmitter setup. I'm on DX18, so that's why I'm here. So you have to go to system setup, model, type airplane, 1 aileron, 1 flap. So that's what I have now. They don't indicate what the tail is, so it's obviously normal. And it's not like it takes rocket science to figure this stuff out because you have a Y cable for your aileron. If it was like that, then you would have 2 flaps, or if it was like that, you'd have 2 ailerons with 2 separate channels and then 1 flap. So this is what it is going to be for us. Then basically
if you want to pause it for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so then you're going to go back to the regular mode. You're going to go into throttle cut. You're going to turn that on to whatever switch you want. Switch at H is what I'm using. I don't know why they set it to 130 by default. It's a good way to have it take off your fingers. I set it to -100. That means it shuts throttle stick all the way off unless it's in the regular position. Throttle cut's on. Throttle cut's off. Okay. So throttle cut is currently on, by the way. Flap system. I'm going to turn that on to switch B. Okay, go back to your chart. It says flap position 0 is going to be -100. Okay, so you set that to -100. And it looks like the elevator has no correction at that point. Then at 0 for position 1, you're going to set that to +9%. And then you're going to set these to 60. All right, and that's going to give you your deflection that you want, and then you want an elevator correction of about 13. Speed, I'm going to set it to 2 seconds as recommended by the manual, which is here. And when you're done with that, you should be able to walk back. Make sure there's no rotations. It doesn't say we need to rotate any of our stuff. So at this point, we should be able to just start binding. So I'm going to pause it and get to the binding page. Okay, so I forgot one thing, guys. The timer, it says to set it for 7 minutes. So I set it for 7. One timeout is active, and I like tone and vibrate. So basically, when you're over the 25%, then the timer starts. It keeps going. You can also set it like on a glider. You can set it so that when the stick position is out, over 25 or whatever, over 10 or whatever you set it to, it'll run down your timer. So in my case, I'm going to clear it. Okay. All right, guys, the bind procedure is a little bit more complex on these when you're doing safe select. Safe select is really cool because you can just pick whatever available switch you have and it will respond accordingly. So like in my case, I'll probably use the gear switch since there isn't gear on this plane. And I'm already using the flat mode switch and I can reach to this quickly for safe. I usually use this as my gyro, use switch D for my gyro controls on my other planes, so I'm sort of torn between doing this and this. So I don't know, maybe I'll make them both work. Either way, the difference between a normal bind for AS3X and the safe select is that you pull the bind plug out before you actually bind. So you initiate the binding process by having the bind plug in the battery, just like you would normally do on any other receiver. The difference is before you fire this thing on while holding your bind switch, you're just going to unplug this. So that's how you do safe select, okay?